Hello and welcome to this weekend's update. So I'm going to look at the technology stocks just to see how they're doing and what are they telling us. So I'll look at Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, NVDA, Netflix, and so forth. So starting off with Tesla on a weekly basis. So on a weekly basis, I think Tesla, on a weekly, it did very well, I would say, considering the fact that the market was weak. Tesla finished up 2%. So far, I would say it's still holding up fine on a weekly basis. You can see that it's above these weekly moving averages, the daily 20 and 50. RSI is above the 50 level. So I'm not seeing any sort of weakness on a weekly basis yet. So on a weekly basis, obviously, this is the area to take out. So the previous high was around 280. But overall, and you don't want to see if it breaks below this weekly moving averages, that would be negative. The pink one is around 228. So on a weekly basis, a close underneath 228 is negative, and obviously above 278 is positive. But overall, to me, it's still looking fine to me. If I look at on a daily basis, this is where I think Tesla has some work to do. You can see that at the moment it has closed right at the daily 20 and 50 EMA. It needs to clear that. It needs to get back above these moving averages on a daily basis. You can see on a daily basis RSI is still below 50. So for me to become full-blown bullish on Tesla on a daily basis, I want to see RSI get back above 50 and then retest and then do something like this. Test and then go. But at the moment RSI is below 50. Now what I'm looking out for is whether it does something like this, pulls back to here and then does something like this. RSI is at these resistance level and does something like this. So that would be negative. That's basically the thing to watch out for, whether it clears and holds and then does that like this. If so, you want to see RSI does something like this. Or on the bearish case, these moving averages acts as a resistance and we get another leg down. RSI comes back up to 50, we get another leg down. So that's on the bearish side. So the two moving averages around 252, let's say 253. You want to see a daily close above 253 and hold. And you want to see a daily close above 50 on the RSI. If so, then the daily picture will turn positive. So that's Tesla. Let's look at Apple on a weekly basis first. On a weekly basis, what we see is that it's still on a weekly consolidation mode, but it tested the weekly 50 this week. Right now, it's trapped in between the weekly 20 and weekly 50. So from a weekly perspective, a close underneath 168 is negative, because that basically means that it's going to be underneath both of these moving averages. And a close above 178 will clear the 20 EMA. So this is 178 and this is 168. So negative underneath, and you can see RSI is now below 50. If it gets back above 50, that's positive. But on the other hand, if it bounces up to this and then does that, that's going to be negative. Something like this. You see right here, where there was a bounce, came up to the 50, and then boom, another leg down. Be aware of this. You can see MACD is moving lower. So there's some work to be done on a weekly basis. Now, if we look at the daily basis, so what do we see? On a daily basis, you can clearly see that it's moving lower. The moving averages, the daily 20 and 50 are moving lower. So these are now going to act as a dynamic resistance. So if there is a bounce up to this level, it's entirely possible that it does something like this. Until price clears these moving averages, the top one is around 179. So let's say this is 179 on a daily basis. If it's able to get back above and holds it, I would say that the daily picture will start to become positive. And on a daily basis, you want to see RSI clear, does something like this, that would be positive. But on the other hand, it can come up to this and then we could have another leg down. RSI could come up to the 50 level and does something like this. So that's a negative. So until and unless RSI clears 50 completely, clears and then retests, then I'll have conviction that, hey, this correction is over. Maybe Apple is ready to move higher. 200-day moving average is right here, which is around 166. So that would be a level to watch if there is a weakness. But until it clears these moving averages and RSI, be cautious on Apple. Microsoft. So let's start off on a weekly basis. Microsoft. On a weekly basis, it's still holding this previous swing low. Although it's underneath the weekly 20, this swing low, it has held. If it breaches this, the weekly 50, it will be the next level to watch, which is around 301, 300, 301. RSI hasn't closed the below the 50, so I would say the weekly picture is still okay. On a daily basis, it has work to do on a daily basis, just like any other tech stock or overall market. The moving averages, the daily 20 and 50 are beginning to move lower. So they're going to act as a resistance. So if it does something like this, it's possible. RSI could move up to this level and we could see another rejection there. So be aware of it. Only when RSI clears 50 and then retests this, then you want to have some conviction. And once it clears this, and pulls back and retests this and does something like this, that's when you want to have conviction on the long side. But until then, stay cautious. The bounce could just be an oversold bounce. As long as RSI remains underneath, any bounce could be just an oversold bounce. They tend to be short-lived. So that's Microsoft. If we look at NVDA, let's look at it on a weekly basis. So on a weekly basis, we had this pullback, and then we had it found support at the weekly 20. So this week, it rallied of that level. Now, what's the weekly level to watch? Okay, so on a weekly basis, this level is very important. This is around 442. You can see this week's high. The previous week's high is also at this level. You see this candle's low is at this level. This candle's low, this candle's low is also at this level. So on a weekly basis, this is a very important level, 442. So if you see a weekly close above 442, that is positive. That would be positive. Overall, the weekly chart still looks fine. I would say still a bit stretched, but it's still fine because it hasn't closed underneath the weekly 20 EMA. The weekly 50 is way below down there. That is something to be addressed. RSI hasn't fallen below, so I think the weekly picture still looks fine. Now, if we look at on a daily basis, so what can we see on a daily basis? This one looks similar to Tesla, where it has rallied and it's come up to the daily 20 and 50 EMA. The question is this going to be an area of resistance and we're going to see another leg down? And you can see RSI has come back up to the 50 level, whether it's come back up to this, whether it does that. That's something you want to be prepared for. But if on the other hand, if it clears this moving averages and then retests this and does something like this, that I think would be positive, and RSI then should do something like this. If so, then I would have a lot more conviction that maybe it can move up towards this level. But until RSI gets it remains underneath the 50 level, I'm not going to have much of a conviction. This could very well be a bear flag consolidation. So that will be invalidated if, let's say, it clears this level, and RSI clears above this level. Then I would basically say that the bear flag will be invalidated. So that's that's NVIDIA. Let's look at Netflix. Netflix on a weekly basis, you can see that Netflix has been weak, and then it's now at the weekly 50. I mean, margin of error is actually quite small for Netflix. RSI is below the 50 level. So if it wants to, reclaim its weekly technical picture, then obviously it needs to get back above these moving averages, and RSI needs to get back above the 50 level. So I'm watching Netflix this week because it has three negative weeks. So I want to see whether or not it can reclaim some of its, repair some of the technical damage. But this is on a weekly basis is weak. On a daily basis, you can clearly see that moving averages have crossed right here and moving lower. So you want to see it clear these moving averages. Where is the pink line? Pink line is around 410. So on a daily basis, there's quite a bit of work to be done. I mean, it's at the daily 200-day moving averages, but as long as it remains underneath the moving averages, I would be cautious. Any rebound is going to be an oversold bounce. So if you see it rebound to 400, don't get excited unless it clears these moving averages. And another thing is that RSI could very well do something like this until RSI clears the 50 level on a daily basis and tests. Don't have too much conviction on Netflix. So you want to see improvement not just on a daily basis but on a weekly basis as well. Amazon, on a weekly basis, what is it looking like? So Amazon, the whole discretionary sector has been under pressure because of the concern that higher rates is gonna mean that consumers will have less money for discretionary spending. So the whole sector has been under pressure, and Amazon fell also. So it's underneath the weekly 20, but above the weekly 50. So this is a level to watch, which is around 122. So this pink line is 122. RSI is still above 50. So I would say Amazon weekly is still okay. It's not great, but it's still okay. If the price fell underneath the weekly 50 and RSI fell under below the 50 level, then that will become negative. On a daily basis, again, you can see just like any other stocks, underneath the moving averages, they are now beginning to cross. Question is whether it's going to move up to this level and then get rejected, in which case you want to see RSI will come up and then get rejected like this. On the other hand, if you see a move back and shallow pullback and then do this and reclaim the moving averages, that would be positive, in that which case you will see something like this on RSI and eventually. So watch the price action. You want to see to become bullish on Amazon again, you want to see it clear the moving averages, and you want to see it clears the daily 50. So weekly is still okay, but the daily needs work. So that's Amazon. Google, let's see. I think Google is probably the best looking on a weekly basis because it hasn't yet breached any of the weekly moving averages. RSI is comfortably above. So weekly looks fine. I mean, needs some work on a daily basis because it's come back up to this these daily 20 and 50 EMA, and we see some rejection on Friday at the daily 20. And look at the RSI, it's come back up to the 50, and we see this pullback. The question is this going to be a shallow pullback and then do something like this? In which case, and then price will do something like this. So I'm watching to see what happens because RSI is now, it's rejected. If it does that, then I would say that, Google might be a play on the long side. And then if it clears those daily 20, where is that? 133.5. So if it closes, say, around 134 and holds it, I think Google might have a play on the long side because then the daily picture will be positive, the weekly would be positive. So among the tech stock, I would be looking more towards Google than any other stocks at this point. All right, I'll leave it at that. I thank you very much for watching the video. I'll come back with an update next week. Thank you.